Hey, everybody, this is Alex Fabrega coming at you again with another Teaching Tips Tuesday. We are continuing our series on the impacts that a visual impairment has on child development. And today we have with us Erin Miller. She's one of our incredible speech language pathologists here at Foundation for Blind Children. How you doing today, Erin?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being on. And since you are our SLP, we're going to be looking at these impacts on development through the social and language piece, right?
Correct.
All right, let's get started right with language.
All right. So the first thing we're going to talk about is just the building blocks of language, or the skills our children need to develop speech, language, and communication skills. So when we look at the foundational blocks of language, they're hearing, attention, listening, and then vision. So if we take that vision piece away right at the beginning, we already have kind of a skewed foundation for building our language. So language development starts the moment our babies are born. They're naturally attracted to faces and start looking at us and making eye contact at only a few hours old. So looking at people in faces is very important. It gives babies the chance to learn about people, learn about facial expressions, body language, and even at a young age, watch how people start making speech sounds. So looking and watching at others leads to good listening and conversational skills. And for example, a child might ask for an object or simply just draw attention to what they want by looking at it, and the mother will know what they want.
This reminds me a lot of something we like to talk about on Teaching Tips Tuesday, and that is incidental learning. That
That's
they're just looking at it and picking it up.
exactly, that's a perfect segue. So as you guys mentioned in the first part of the series, incidental learning plays a big part in the development of a child's language skills. So it's believed that 80% of what we learn is actually through our vision. If you find that surprising, just think of what happens when you enter a room. So at first glance, you typically see and understand the contents of the room, which then will lead you to understand the context of the room. So for example, if you walk in and you see a stove, a table, a microwave, and a sink, you would automatically know you're in a kitchen, as opposed if you walk into a room and there's a toilet, a shower, and a sink, you know you're in a bathroom. So you just automatically and instantaneously know where you're at or what's going on. That is incidentally. So the lack of incidental learning does affect language in a lot of different ways. So I'm just going to touch on a few of them today.
Sure.
So the first thing I'm going to talk about is just understanding vocabulary and object names. So vision enables us to perceive objects in their totality and in their context. That is, we quickly take in a lot of information through our vision and gather the whole picture. So for example, you might walk into your kitchen and you see a bowl filled with cereal and milk with a spoon next to it, sitting on a table with your family around it, and you just automatically know that it's time for breakfast. Children with visual impairments may only see objects within inches or arm's reach or within their preferred visual field. So they're missing out on a lot of that visual information. So we have to teach our kids sequentially through observation to be able to create that whole picture. So for example, they could only see or touch part of the bowl. So you really just have to start with teaching them what the bowl is, and then move on to teaching them that we put cereal into that bowl. And then we might teach them what a spoon is. And over time, they can start making that connection that all those things would equal breakfast.
Are all in that breakfast category.
Exactly.
And just the simple, any object that is silent or is not making active noise in the environment, the child cannot ask, what is that? That classic young child development, what's that?
Pointing to it. What's going on over there?
Perceiving that, you can't ask what it is.
Exactly. So everything really has to be taught discreetly and explicitly to our kids. When we talk about parts of a whole, looking at an object and only be able to see part of it, there's a really good story that's been passed down to me here at FBC from one of our PTs, and it just really gives you an aha moment of what we have to teach our children. There was a 14-year-old girl here in one of our programs, and she was asked one day, "Can you explain to me what a car is?" And she said, "A car is a moving couch." Because the only part of the car that she ever knew was getting in the seat, sitting down, and then it took her somewhere. So their lesson that entire day was going out and letting her tactically explore an entire car, knowing that it had wheels, that it had a steering wheel. So the seat that she was sitting in was part of a bigger object.
Yeah.
So like I said, our kids really have to have that time to tactically explore different objects and different items. And a big problem with that sometimes is a lot of things that we want them to learn and explore could be dangerous. You can't just go up and start feeling a lion and explaining to the kid what a lion is. Same with things like fire. They can't just go tactically explore and get very close so it's in their visual field, because that might be dangerous to them. So we have to start teaching them different parts of a lion, maybe start talking about, tails, and all these different animals have tails, building up to they have, a lion's mane where they can feel like maybe a stuffed animal's mane, and then just really starting to build that lion together so they can understand the full concept.
And there are so many contextual vocabulary pieces leading up to that. If they haven't had experiences with fluffy fur versus rough fur versus large versus small, there are so many other elements that have to build up to that before you can even start that part to whole instruction.
Exactly. They can't just like their typically sighted peers take it all in and you can explain it all at once. It's a very sequential process.
Absolutely.
And so ways that you can help with your kids learning vocabulary is present objects in isolation, one at a time, or even just one part at a time, like you were just talking about, and allow them that time to explore it and give them repeated experiences with it. Do the same thing over and over again for, 10 or 20 times until they really understand the concept of it. If their vision is more advanced, you can start using language that builds on identifying the salient features. Those are the features such as the color of it, the size of it, and maybe the function, why we use it. So you might tell them, you're holding a small silver spoon. It has a handle and a lip, and you use it to scoop your food and eat it. So you can kind of start using those vocabulary words if their vision's more advanced.
And then the tangential words connected to it. Spoon is kind of like ladle, but different, which is kind of like scoop, but different.
Exactly. And then we can get into this whole talk about object generalization, but there's a whole other part that you can teach as well.
Excellent. Are you ready to move on to social skills?
Yeah, so the second area of language is social language. So a big piece of social language is the nonverbal language. Things that we just observe casually and understand about social situations. Things like personal space, how close we might stand to somebody. We know that we get very uncomfortable if someone's standing very close to us, so we might take a step back. Our kids with visual impairments might not understand how close they're even standing to somebody or how that might feel to stand close to somebody. Another area is facial expressions. We observe facial expressions throughout conversations. We can really pick up on people's emotions, how they're feeling just by watching their facial expressions. Kids with visual impairments might miss visually what's going on with the face. So we have to teach them kind of through people's voice tones, that they're mad. You can tell they're mad if their voice changes or if they're excited. There's just different ways we can teach emotions to them. Another area that they might not pick up on is body language. If I'm crossing my arms and leaning back and kind of scaling with my face, they may not understand that I'm mad. Or if I just kind of start, shuffling my feet and looking around, they may not pick up on the fact that I'm bored and I'm kind of done with the conversation.
And it's those negative cues that I find are missing far more than positive cues, especially like that personal space one. They don't see the
Yeah, they might
face
not tell the face,
paired
like
with
I'm
the
very
backup. Yeah.
uncomfortable. I need you to back up. Yeah, exactly. Another area of social language that is hard for children with visual impairment is just reading a room. Typically, sighted peers can walk in and see maybe people sitting around quietly at their desk, looking up, watching the teacher talk. They're not really reading the room and understanding that everybody's listening to something going on. So they might enter the room because they ran to the bathroom, they came back, and they may just come in, talking about what happened to them in the hallway and not really reading the room and understanding everybody's being quiet and listening to the teacher. Another thing we see with our kids socially is they often talk about themselves a lot. Their world is kind of just, introverted with them, and they can't see what's going on with other people. So when they enter a social situation, instead of making the observation, so-and-so is talking about the skateboard he has in his hand, they might just start talking about something about themselves because they're not able to read the room.
And it's all about that perceptual range. If your perceptual range is 2 feet, that's where all the interesting stuff is.
Exactly. That's where everything is happening in your world. Correct. And the last part of social skills I just kind of want to touch on is self-help, or what we kind of refer to as active participation. So typically sighted peers are able to watch what's going on in their environment when it comes to their basic needs being met. They're able to watch their meals being prepared, their drinks being poured, or clothing being picked out for them. But children with visual impairments are missing out on all that visual information when it comes to their basic needs. Our kids want to feel that they're able to do things for themselves. It helps build their confidence. It helps build that connection with peers. Like you're able to pour your own drink at snack or open your own Ziploc bag at snack. But no one ever taught me to do that. And I didn't even know that was an option. So we really want to make them an active participant in their getting their daily needs met. And parents are very, good-willed and well-meaning and trying to help get their kids' basic needs met, that they often forget that they do need to teach them that so that those they can do exactly what their peers can do.
And I've used that peer comparison as motivation for why I want the student to learn this. Like, well, why do I need to learn how to open my bag of chips or whatever? Well, your buddy Steve can open his bag of chips.
Exactly, you want to be able
And
to do
you know,
exactly what he can do.
and a typically sighted kid, they just would have seen Steve open that bag of chips, and so it's something you have to explicitly teach those social comparisons.
Exactly, when it
Yeah.
comes to vocabulary and then the social skills, everything needs to be explicitly taught to them.
All right. Well, thank you so much for talking to us about these two things. I have one more question for you today, and that is, what is your favorite part of your job?
My favorite part about being a speech language pathologist is the fact that, to me, giving a child the voice to get their wants and needs met and giving them a voice to be able to be social with their peers, um, it's just a very important part of life, and I feel like I get to help out with that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being on again. We really appreciate having the SLP perspective.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
And thank you so much at home for watching another episode of Teaching Tips Tuesday. Next week, we are planning on having an occupational therapist on to talk more about those fine motor skills, and we very much hope to see you again. Have a good week.